I am Brad Keelor. She is Beth Gross. Coming up next on our second very special holiday director's cut, you're going to find out a lot, including her top Christmas sweets and which geo legend she would want to spend 24 hours in the wilderness with.
When I was small, I believed in Santa Claus, though I knew it was my dad. And I would hang up my stocking at Christmas.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, except 1 week at the holidays and during the summer, I sit down with a different GI member who has many stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this today, you can head over to geoinstitute.org, and there you will find out, I think it's probably hundreds, I won't go thousands of things about us, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and I always think you will. I feel extremely confident today that everybody will like what they see. You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. It is our second holiday episode. We bring out the big guns for the holidays. So we had John Stewart last week. This week, coming to us from Tallahassee, Florida, where she is a senior consultant with Geo-Syntec, it is Beth Gross. Beth, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Brad.
I think I should also mention at this point that you were the 2018-2019 Geo-Institute President. And maybe that'll come up at other points during the interview. Maybe it won't, but we'll get it out there now. We have 10 questions for you, the same way that we have for everybody every week. And 2 of them are the same that we ask everybody every week. And we begin, as is tradition, with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Okay, maybe a little more than that, but so with my experience as a civil engineer and geotechnical, master's in geotech, and then PhD studies in geotechnical engineering, as well as geoenvironmental engineering and soil hydrology, my practice is broad-based. So I started off being involved with waste containment systems. Started with Geosyntec in '87, and still do some of that work, but it expanded to facility development, straight geotech, and site development, so including civil, environmental, and geotechnical aspects. Currently, I'm involved with hazardous waste, so designing and developing hazardous waste management facilities, processing facilities, as well as continuing my work with geoenvironmental issues for coal combustion facilities.
And because it's been a while since we've had a geoenvironmental person on, we're going to hit you hard with a couple of good geoenvironment questions as we go throughout the interview today, just so you can show off your expertise. But it is Director's Cut. The meat and potatoes of these interviews are what we call the fun questions. And I always say they're all fun, but some are more fun than others. And we start you off with one of those, Beth. 'Tis the holiday season. What are your top 5 Christmas candies or sweets? And I think you should rank them. But if you can't, if they're all just 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, that's okay too.
Okay. I think candy canes, because I like that peppermint and the color, and it puts me in that holiday mood. So then I moved to peppermint bark. Then, of course, hot chocolate. Hot chocolate with marshmallows, yes. And then maybe Bush Noel, and then adult beverages that are warm. For example, mulled wine, maybe eggnog with bourbon. Is that 6?
That is. Now we have to ask some clarifying questions here, and I'm going to go to the hot cocoa, to the middle one. Do you make it from a mix? Do you make it from scratch from ingredients, or do you just get it externally from some other provider who's going to make it the way you want it?
You know what? If I make it myself from at scratch, that does taste the best, but it's easier. Typically, it's going to be from some external provider.
We won't even, we get no promotional considerations from that company whose name starts with Star and ends with Bucks, or from Pete's or any of those other places, so we won't mention it. But that's a pretty solid. And you just got back from a very cold place where you said you had a lot of mulled wine. Was there anything special about it with the mulled wine that you had in Quebec, or was it pretty garden variety?
I mean, I thought it was really good. And I had also wine. I believe they added bourbon to it, and they actually throw in a little bit of maple flavoring. That's interesting as well.
And that's how you went to Canada, right? You got to have the maple in there. That is fantastic.
Yes.
So I mentioned off the top that we were going to talk a little bit more about geoenvironmental stuff, and here it is. It's already coming up. The third question is always the research or practice question. You're going to talk about a slope stability problem that you had in a landfill somewhere in southeastern America and how it brought you back to basics. Beth, tell the story.
Okay. Let me go back a little bit before that. And so I've dealt with a lot of slope stability issues with landfills, and part of the reason is that landfills are initially designed and they're permitted, and they assume certain parameters, and they assume strengths of interfaces. So this would be like a landfill, for example, would have a thin geomembrane layer, but it's a plastic layer, and so it can be very slippery. And now we have all types of texturing, et cetera, and different types of polymers. But when we first started designing these waste containment facilities, there was not much information. So they were doing some research at universities, but they were for specific products that wouldn't apply to everything. So people would construct things and assume parameters versus actually measure shear strength. And there were a number of landfill failures, and it may not be that significant. They could be even some issues with sliding along a liner system while it was constructed. The project I'm interested in talking about is the one where it was a landfill issue. There was a landfill that experienced a slope stability failure, and the landfill started to exhibit cracking, and the cracking of this municipal landfill the cracks were covered up. So you just kind of go by, push materials around, and the crack disappears. And they want to make sure there's not a crack, so you don't have water go into the waste and could create issues. Well, the cracks kept getting bigger and bigger, and soon the waste was moving faster and faster. And so I got involved in that project, and we were trying to figure out where the issue was. Was it that all this waste was sliding on the liner system in the landfill? And so the landfill would have some steeper backside slopes and kind of a flatter floor, and it was moving kind of along. The waste itself was sloped like this, and the whole area, the waste was moving with cracks developing all along it, and waste blocks moving down the slope. But when I looked at aerial photographs of the site over time, I realized this area was all in a borrow area. So this is an area that's underlain by an overconsolidated high plasticity clay. And this new area of the landfill was constructed in an area that had been mined for soil that was used in landfill construction, and that 10 years earlier. And it was very, very low hydraulic conductivity clay. So in the southeast U.S., where you get a lot of rain, those borrow areas were full of water continuously. So 10 years later, when this over-consolidated clay has had time to expand and soften, they dewatered the borrow areas, they excavated part of that clay, and they constructed the new cell. And later on, we determined that it wasn't an internal failure within the landfill. It wasn't along the liner system. It was in the soil itself. And why wasn't this picked up before? Because, in fact, nobody had ever looked at there weren't even any geotechnical evaluations of the landfill soils beneath it, because they assumed that the soils were very stiff. But then that wasn't considered when they went to operate and develop the landfill. They didn't think of what would happen if they developed it this way into in a borrow pit that had been where you have this clay, expansive clay. So we ended up having to regrade the slope and put in stability berm, and it was 500,000 cubic yards of waste that were moving at that time. But it's going back to basic principles.
So I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago and kind of expand on it. Not necessarily about this project, but almost any of these projects. When you get that call, that's essentially, we need somebody to come out and take a look at this landfill. How do you know what to expect? Because I would assume in many cases there's a city engineer or a county engineer checking these things out, and they're the person who sees the cracks or the slide or whatever first. How do you know what to expect when you go out to that site initially? Because to me, it seems like most of the time it's going to be much worse than somebody anticipates, right?
You have to get as much information as possible before you go inside, but you have to go lay eyes on it. You have to understand the site geology. There was a kind of a significant slide in soil beneath a landfill in Texas, and this was, I feel like it was on the Eagle Ford clay, but it was it was a over-consolidated clay that high plasticity, and there wasn't enough evaluation of the foundation itself. But you have to go out and take a look at it, and then you may do some additional analyses. You may collect some soil samples to evaluate what's going on. You may even put some slip indicators in the mass itself to try to determine where the slide is occurring. But when something is starting to move, you don't have that much time. You're trying to stop it.
Well, that is fantastic, and a good answer there. And for anybody who lives near landfills or landfills that have been developed on top of, I think this is pretty pertinent to them. Now, you are a native Floridian. You're there now. You know, before we recorded, you said you kind of gotten around and come full circle, and now you're back in Florida. I'm not going to break any news here. People watch the news. They see stories. Florida it gets kind of a weird reputation, right? What are the three, well, not even three, you can go with any number you want. What myths do you have to dispel to other people about Florida?
Well, one myth is that Florida is flat. And it's not. There are areas that are flat, but it's not flat. In fact, we have a class 3 rapid here in Florida. So some of the rivers have basically excised the underlying materials, and so you can have some tall bluffs, and you can have there's only one class 3 rapid, but where I live in Tallahassee, we have some areas. We have beautiful, beautiful rivers, great for kayaking and canoeing, but they've excised some of the limestone, and there is a park around here that is a serious climb. And people consider it as hard as some of the hikes in Georgia or Tennessee. It's Torreya Falls State Park. They have a sign up because people tend to think we're going on a hike in a Florida park. They don't take enough water, and then they run out of water. They can't, it's hours to get up and down. It's pretty difficult. It's actually the most challenging hike in Florida.
Oh, that's
it's about
amazing.
an hour. It's about 45 minutes west of here. Mm-hmm.
Tell everyone, where's the Class 3 rapids for people who want to experience that?
That's more central, a little bit central Florida. It's interesting though. A little bit kind of north central. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're gonna find, and I'll find that out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so everybody can check it out and see. And Florida's not completely flat.
It's called Big Slough. I haven't been there, but Big Slough.
That's a pretty good one to pick.
And the other one is the park is Torreo State Park.
And we'll find a link to that too, so people can check it out when they visit North Florida. They can check that out and pay a visit and see the bluffs. It sounds good geologically too. If you're a geology nerd, that sounds like a good place to hang out. And a lot of good fossils that you can collect there. Mm-hmm. At Torreo, yes. Fantastic. So, another question that I knew we had to work into the interview is about pet birds. I'm a bird person, but to a much lower degree than you are. I do have to say that. I feel like a rookie compared to what you've done. Let me open the door. Let me see if we can hear some. I don't know. We're going to test the team's mic here and see if it'll filter out the bird noises. We've got a parakeet at our house that we've had for a long time, but Beth, you're like next level. What are the things that people need to know about having pet birds? Well, I started with a small bird that it came into a wildlife rehab facility in Austin, and we couldn't find the owner. It must have been a pet bird that escaped, but in fact, these birds were introduced into Austin. They have wild colonies up in New York City and down to Miami. Their monk parakeets are Quakers, and I decided I would take it. I was actually very scared of it. It's only this tall. And I took it home because nobody wanted it, and so I had that bird. And then I interacted with a vet and she ended up having rescue parrots, and I took another bird. The next bird I got was a blue and gold macaw, and that was Monty, and he was in somebody's apartment, and he made so much noise they would put him in the closet to keep him quiet. So I felt so sad. I took Monty. I know. And then I had a friend who was moving to Colorado and couldn't take a bird. And then I took Dougie, a hyacinth macaw, and he was in Spy Kids 2. So he's a movie star bird, and he's a very good boy. And then the vet came back and said, I have a baby sulfur-crested cockatoo, and the owners are leaving. I need to find a place for it. And he was so cute, and I took him too. And that was enough. That was enough. And then the same vet asked me, there was somebody who had a bird, and these birds live a very long time, and the owner had passed away and wanted to know if I took an African gray. And by that time I had already taken too many birds. I was younger then, but now I've accepted that we have to take care of these guys forever, and it really will be forever. They have the whole sunroom. They live in the sunroom now. But they can. One bird will walk up the stairs. We're separated by stairs. He walks up and he looks, and he comes in the room. That's the hyacinth. So what's been the most challenging part about having all of them for you guys? At night, well, first I thought the Quakers were loud, but then we got the hyacinth macaw, and he is incredibly loud, and you'll scream for breakfast in the morning, and they also don't like to go to bed at night, and they're like toddlers all the time. We don't have kids. I have my nieces and nephews and all are around, and my sisters.
all live near me, so I see them. But these guys, they're like toddlers forever. And so with Tommy, and he is the silver-crested cockatoo who likes to dance EDM, but I tell him good night, bird, good bird. I'm putting him to sleep. He goes, hello, good bird. I'm like, good night, good bird. And so he doesn't want to go to sleep. So that's difficult. It's an effort. We have to bribe him. We put a little treat in the other big guy's cage. Anyway,
I think what we've found out is there are a lot of people who are terrified of having a bird flying around your house. But once you get used to it, and I mean, you take all the precautions you need to so they don't fly outside your house or anything like that. They're contained inside. It's good exercise for them. They have different spots in the house they like to go. We do still have some friends who are scared out of their minds, though, that we have a bird flying free in the house. I mean, has it ever been a problem for you guys?
Let me see it's hard if we want to go on vacation because you have to find somebody that will feel comfortable enough to come and take care of the birds. And I typically would get my niece to come over here and help. That's a hard part. Also, we may be talking and they want us to talk to them and they may make noise. So it's not good for dinner parties. I now have some curtains I pull down. They get too loud and like, there goes the curtain. That's it.
You know what? I've always thought that birds look particularly good in top hats and maybe with a monocle. They could be the dinner entertainment instead of having to sit over there. I don't know how long it would last before they throw the hat off or anything, but if you're looking for options.
If we want to have a dance party, we could use Tommy.
That is fantastic. So the other question that we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is to tell their ASCE origin story and how you got involved with ASCE and then GI after that.
Do you hear a bird yet?
We're hearing them now. We're picking it up.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So I've been involved with ASCE since I was working on my civil engineering degree. So it's forever. And so started in school as an undergraduate and continued on. And I became involved with the GI when I went back to UT to work on a PhD. And GI had just started and Dave Daniel brought me into the GI. And so I was involved in a technical committee and was that 93? Involved with the GI since then. We went to one of the first conferences in Utah.
Which is why we're going back for our 30th anniversary. You might see that logo up there. We'll be in Salt Lake for the 30th anniversary Geo-Congress this year to commemorate that first one in Logan. It was at Utah State University.
Logan, and we had, it was in Logan. And I remember we had a fire alarm. I think there was some smoke, there was a fire alarm, and we got to see everybody in their pajamas in.
That's amazing. Oh, that's a really good memory, though. I like that. We're going to have to include that somehow in the Salt Lake thing. We won't have a fire alarm, though, in the middle of the night. I can guarantee that we're not going to do that. So we mentioned at the top of the show that you were GI president 2018-2019, and this is after you did many other things for the Geo-Institute too. And when you're president, that means you've been on the board for like 5 years already up to that point. When you joined the board, what made you want to join the board, I guess, in the first place? And then what was the best thing about your time on the board, about your service during those 7 years?
I think it was, I enjoyed helping, interacting with the GI, kind of connecting people on the technical, through all the different committees and trying to push everything forward. There's so many groups within the GI that we want to make sure everybody's coordinated and kind of expand what we're doing. Also, I think when I was on the board, we had made some significant contributions to the GI in part, like the we have the name for it, the something accord with SEI.
Oh,
And
the
that was
Oak Brook Accord.
the Oak Brook Accord. Yes, yes. At the same time, I remember being involved with promoting civil engineering, making sure that that licensure was important, and we also help support geologists. Once you start taking away the professions and like geology, not having them licensed or not having engineers licensed, I think that's a big concern for quality and risk to public safety.
And it makes me happy because we don't have to deal with it as much anymore. But that anti-licensure fervor has kind of died down in the last few years. For a while, it felt like we were going somewhere every couple of months to testify.
Yes.
And you got to do that in Arizona, right?
In Arizona. Yeah, I thought a little bit of that was coming back, and there are a little bit of that coming back.
And we'll be ready. GI has we now call it our professional practice committee that works on issues such as licensure. And that's a great pitch for the viewers too. If you want to get involved, we do have, in addition to the technical committees, we have several board level committees on things like professional practice. You can get involved in government relations, still be involved in technical activities. And if you are interested in that, we actually have a form on the website where you can go and say, hey, I'm interested in serving, and these are the things I am interested in, and we would love it if you would do that. We always have enough volunteer opportunities for everybody, and now those birds are really getting fired up, and that is fantastic.
They're excited about all this too.
We'll have that for the rest of the interview. I love that. So we do have to ask you another geo-environment question. And it's not often that a lot of geotech issues make it into the mainstream news. But one thing that applies to geotech that has been mainstream news in the last few years is PFAS. Beth, can you walk everybody through what is PFAS just generally, and then why is it such a big deal for the geotech profession?
I guess and if I probably need to say it's really for geo-environmental. So it's per and polyfluoroalkyl compounds, and they basically are very resistant to degradation, so they're forever chemicals. And there's a whole series of them. These are man-made chemicals that have human health effects. So they can cause cancers, they interact with hormones, but they also have health effects at very, very low concentrations, and that is an issue. And these are chemicals that, for example, are in Teflon. They're in fire retardants. They're in our Scotch Guard, and we like these chemicals because they work so well. In fact, I thought I read that some of the chefs on TV, they're not going to give up their Teflon pans. Mm-hmm. Patagonia, I know, is changing their raincoats to not use those chemicals. They're using some other materials. Since I was going into Canada, I wanted to try to waterproof my shoes, and I looking for a better chemical, and I was going to try. I did buy silicone, but I actually just went ahead and bought waterproof shoes instead because I seemed more likely my feet would be warm. So these chemicals are a health issue in concentrations in a nanogram per liter concentration range. So if we compare these type of chemicals, EPA's developed drinking water standards for, I think, 6 of them now. If we look at the drinking water standard for benzene, it's the maximum contaminant level. For drinking water, it's 5 parts per million. For two of the concentrations that EPA has developed for the PFAS is 4 nanograms per liter. So it's 1,000 times lower. And what does this mean? We throw away all these materials, like, your raincoat, your Scotch guarded products, those go into a landfill. The concentrations in landfill, as water moves into a landfill, it can pick up some of these constituents, and it's in the leachate. And those constituents, if there's a hole in a landfill liner, and there typically will be, if they're not perfect, you can have some of these constituents migrating. And because the concentration from EPA study, the concentrations in landfills are on the order of 1,000 to 10,000 times higher. A little bit of leak can cause groundwater contamination. And I think there's now been issues, people of different cities finding that they're finding these constituents in their drinking water. For us, we have to figure out how. Now so landfills now are a reservoir of these constituents. And what are we going to do? Landfills, we want to be able to walk away from them, but can we really walk away from them? And then even when we take liquids out of it, like in terms of landfill leachate, or we have landfill gas that may go out, the top of the landfill, that can have those forever chemicals in them. And if we go treat it, or it's treated at a wastewater treatment plant, some of these liquids may go over to wastewater, or maybe it's treated, it's generating sludge. You can have the sludge actually has these chemicals in it. So some of these chemicals are in a landfill. They're maybe moving out of the landfill, and it's a giant repository for these forever chemicals. Anyway, that's a concern for the next generation. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, yeah, and I don't think you have to, right? And it's going to be a long time, because I think
it's a long time. It's a long time, and we only know there's only there's not all, there's only a certain number that have been studied. There's thousands of those chemicals.
And we're still working on the long-term studies, because most of these were developed. Yes. I say recently, but yes. They haven't been around for 200 years, so we don't know what the long-term health impacts are of any of these things.
Correct.
Oh, that's really good, though. And we will put the link down in the show notes to those EPA standards that Beth mentioned earlier on in her answer.
Oh, okay, yes. And I can send you another link if somebody wants to look at some EPA stuff, too. I can send you another link. Okay.
Another question that had to appear in the interview was about kayaking, or nature in general. I know you love to get outdoors, and I know you've done a lot of kayaking, canoeing in your life. And so I wanted to ask, Beth, what's the scariest moment that you've ever had in a kayak?
Did you know, did I tell you a story before? Maybe it's all recent.
I don't know. I mean, either way, I don't remember, so it's going to be a surprise.
No, it's great here. We have so many springs. I think Florida has more springs than any other state. So it's a lot of rivers, a lot of springs. It's great to go kayaking in. And I'm within Florida, I'm becoming a Florida Master Naturalist. And for one of our classes, we're out kayaking along, and it's more of a eutrophic lake. And as I had two people in front of me and their kayaks, I'm behind them. And as we're going across, there was a 12-foot alligator. We went over, and then probably a couple weeks after that, that was the story of the woman who fell out of the kayak, went over a large alligator, her and her husband, and she fell, and the kayak tipped, and that was it. So I'm kind of, clear water is better. I feel like I want to just go kayaking in spring water when I can see what's around. I'm scared of the alligators. So when I was younger here, I guess I didn't really think about it, going in lakes and things. There's alligators here, but now I'm less interested in this.
That is amazing, because that's not where I thought this was going to go at all. The thing that I'm always nervous about is the current, right? Because I'm the type of person that'll just get going and won't pay attention, and the current will take me somewhere, it's much stronger than I think.
No, I paddle upstream so I can come back. If I paddle upstream, that's my secret on that. Paddle upstream, unless you have somebody picking you up at the other end.
Right.
No, the alligators. Ugh.
But I mean, for anybody who hasn't been kayaking anywhere in the southeast, and we're talking about really far southeast, so maybe just Georgia and Florida and like Alabama, Mississippi here, the wildlife that you do see is fantastic. I would have to recommend this to anybody. We've gone at Jekyll Island a couple times. You see the spoonbills, you see the oyster beds, you can see manatees,
Yes.
dolphins. It's really, really cool. You're not going to get that in Minnesota. That's
So I do see manatees. There's a river, Wakulla Springs, and go put in upward and kind of go down towards the springs. And right now it's time for manatees. I would probably now see mothers and our families and babies and such. It's nice.
very cool. But the gators, terrifying.
No, but this
I
is
don't
this is it's this is Clearwater. Clearwater is different than that other than a lake, a river, not a lake.
This is a nice segue into this next question. And, sometimes on Director's Cut, I don't know where I come up with this stuff, but there are questions I've just never asked. And so this next one came from somewhere, and it's another wilderness one. Beth, with which geo legend would you most want to spend 24 hours in the wilderness, and why?
It's an easy answer for me. Roy Olson. I really liked Roy as a professor, but I know he has experience in the wilderness. From the stories he told and Dave Daniel told, Roy would take his students. So he'd get several of his grad students, and they would drive to Colorado, and they would all go hiking, and he had all pre-prepared. He would tell them exactly what to bring, where they're going to stop along the way, probably told them we're going to stop here and then we're going to go up the mountain. And he made mountaineers out of all of them. But I think it'd be challenging. Plus, he's always really interesting and he has a lot of opinions.
You said that part of that had to be because he was so organized. That was just his personality. But did you ever hear any stories where anything went wrong or anything like that? Because to me, if you're that planned out, it almost sounds like it was a response to something that went horribly wrong, and you had to make sure that didn't happen again.
I don't know of anything that happened with that. You would have to ask Dave Daniel. I don't know if Dave he probably hasn't gone hiking or up a mountain since that time.
I like that though. And so that's
but
I'm sure answer.
I'm sure he had a lot of stories to tell. I mean, as you're driving from Texas all the way out there, maybe Rocky Mountain National Park, kind of in that area, I'm sure he had a lot of stories for them and they had a lot of fun.
That. Our final question, we've got to get to some holiday stuff here, of course. We started off with the sweets and we end with a more general holiday question. Beth, what's your all-time favorite in your whole life holiday memory?
Okay. So I like all these holidays. I like Christmas. I like Thanksgiving because you are with family, and it always involves food, and I'm with family and friends too. So in our family, we always have oysters. So we're gonna get a bushel of oysters. We're gonna have everybody over. We're gonna have oysters. We've been doing that for years. If I were in Austin, I would go. I have a girlfriend there, and she has a Christmas breakfast every year. Invites everybody over. I'm not there, so we're gonna have to come up with something else. Probably my favorite Christmas memory was, I may have been in college then, or maybe I started it with Geo-Syntec. So I'm the oldest kid, and the youngest is 10 years younger than me. And when we were opening Christmas, my father had apparently been involved in buying Christmas for everybody in the family. So we all started opening up our presents, and we all got a ear warmer from Land's End that matched. And then we got to take a group family picture with everybody wearing matching ear warmers. I'm like, where did he come up with this wacky idea? That was pretty funny though.
And it was just one time. There wasn't
Just one
matching
time,
stuff
yes,
every
yes.
year. Okay.
No, no.
Well, that's crazy then, because a lot of people do this every year where they'll get matching pajamas or some other garment and then do the photo, but yours was a one-time deal. I like that a lot.
One-off,
That is
yes.
hilarious. And the oysters, that sounds fantastic.
It is
I
really
think that's a
I recommend it.
tradition that everybody
Yes.
should espouse. And I don't do you guys make oyster stuffing down there for Thanksgiving and Christmas, or is that
we
more
could.
like a
Well, we could. We actually, we don't make it, but we like it if somebody makes it. We're just going to put them on the grill. We can have raw oysters. It will be outside. Hopefully it's cold because you can be outside. You can have your beer, watch the oysters cook, put them on a cracker, add the Tabasco, add whatever you want to have on it. Yeah.
Although for all of our friends above about 42 degrees latitude there, tell everybody what cold is in Tallahassee, Beth.
I don't know, above freezing.
So while everybody up north is chilled to the bone over the next couple of weeks, you can think of Beth outside on the deck with the grill, with the oysters, making
40,
Christmas magic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cold enough, right?
Yeah,
I
yes,
would call
yes.
that cold. I
Yes,
agree
yeah.
with you. Okay. Well, Beth, you made it through all the questions. You made it through the bonus questions, and we had some holiday spirit along the way and got a lot of geo-environment stuff. So that is fantastic.
Thank you so much, Brad. This was so much fun.
For our viewers, this is it. This is the final director's cut of 2025. I mentioned at the beginning, I take a week off at the holidays. It really is only a week. I'll be back in 2 weeks with the best of 2025 episode, and you'll be able to catch that on the YouTube channel. Happy holidays to all our viewers and your friends and families. And Beth is going to go with a hook 'em there at the end, a little Austin shout out for everybody. Beth, thank you so much for doing this. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Brad.
And we will see everybody out there again in 2 weeks. Back to brand new episodes of Director's Cut.